about the hello, here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Live Levine Update. We are going to get to our special guest really soon, but I want to talk just for a moment about what's happening at school regarding the virus. The pandemic certainly is not over. And I don't say that to scare people. I don't mean that you can't go out and have fun. I don't mean that we're going to close the doors of the school, but this virus and its variants just are not going away anytime soon. We had been looking at Dallas County numbers all along. Even right now, you look at them and they say only 200 or 300 a day, which is relatively little compared to what's been going on the last 2 years. But we're not going to look at that anymore because, the real numbers are exponentially higher. Home tests have dominated the testing landscape out there. And I know our schools around the city, of course, across the country as well, are experiencing more cases each week. Just recently, we at Levine are still attempting to ward off outbreaks by conducting our Test to Stay program, which few schools are doing. And we've caught some people this week. Today my nurse tells me we had 43 cases or 43 tests that she administered, and we had 3 cases today. And yesterday we had a couple of cases, 2 or 3 cases from the kids, another few cases today, a few cases among the staff this week. So it's ticking up. And so now we're heading into summertime, and our summer camps are experiencing higher than ever enrollment, which is great. We will look for new ways to stay healthy, to keep our school classrooms and environment clean, and share information with our community as we receive it regarding cases, even when we go into the summertime. The question we'll be addressing this summer within our school team is to figure out how we can move forward with as much typical normalcy, as possible, while remaining safe, of course. The current BA2 variant phase that we're in, happens to be a highly contagious virus. Let's remember that, it is transferred through viral particles. And this means it can hover in the air for 3 hours before dissipating. And so the virus can transfer from a person to another person, even after that person has left the room, hours before. So our advice really is the same, which is please wear a mask if you're out there entering an environment with other people in close quarters, particularly if those people are strangers or are not people who you normally hang out with. Keep your distance if possible, and keep up with frequent hand washing. In the meantime, we remain a campus open to our families. Please do not miss our traditional tear-inducing ceremony next Friday, May 20th. It's our final Shabbat, where we'll have our blue shirt ceremony with the 8th graders handing off the honor of wearing the blue shirts to the 7th graders. There'll be so much more in store for everyone. And at our final Shabbat, that's next Friday. So I'm so happy that you're joining us. And I want to bring on board our special guest. Dr. Eileen Kennedy-Moore is an internationally published author, psychologist, and speaker whose work focuses on parenting and children's feelings and friendships. She has been a featured guest on several talk shows, such as The Today Show, along with numerous major radio shows. She's been quoted in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, Working Mother, and Women's Day, just to name a few. Her blog, Growing Friendships, on Psychology Today, has 4 million views. Dr. Kennedy-Moore's most recent books for children are Growing Friendships, A Kid's Guide to Making and Keeping Friends, and Growing Friendships During the Coronavirus, which is a great topic for us now. And she also authored books called Kid Confidence, The Unwritten Rules of Friendship, Smart Parenting for Smart Kids, and What's My Child Thinking? Great book. And she is the professor for an audio video series from the great courses called Raising Emotionally and Socially Healthy Kids. So Dr. Eileen Moore, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me here, Tim.
Well, it's great to have you. And, I just want to begin at the top of this with, schools, the school business has really changed a lot. And of course, the family needs have changed. And what we've really worked on bringing into the schools so much recently has been this idea of social emotional education. And I know it's important, but is there something going on in today's society? Like what are there new family dynamics? What's this all about? Is it an economic issue? What's prompting this phenomenon?
All of the above plus COVID. I mean, you have done such a wonderful thing for your families as a community at the Levine Academy about keeping the kids together as much as possible. In my area, there were a lot of closures, and it was very class oriented about whether you could afford to go to a private school and maybe get a more normal education versus the public schools where everything was shut down. And what I'm hearing from teachers is that the kids are more anxious, more weepy, more aggressive, and less able to handle just regular rubbing elbows, trying to get along with each other than they used to be. So it has been very, very costly. I think the other thing that adds to the climate of this is, let's call it adults behaving badly. The climate right now is full of incivility and divisiveness and a lack of compassion on many sides. We're doing wrong by our kids here. Boy,
there's a lot of topics right in that, and how to really approach it. Your book, it's written, the Growing Friendships book. I read it. I thought it was great for adults.
That is the number one comment I get about Growing Friendships is, oh, this applies to adults, and it's true.
I wanted that book.
Yeah, it's not like we master social skills at age 9 and then we're set for life.
I think it's great because you actually bring out in the opening of that book about how you can use this book, and it's about you're giving these wonderful golden nuggets of about everyday issues and how to make friends, and it seems so simplistic, I mean, and you just outline the environment in which we are living in right now, where this becomes so crucial for everyone's happiness, obviously, and for a lot more. I mean, for everyone's well-being. And I just wondered if you could share some of those golden nuggets, about what are the foundational elements of growing good friendships. And of course, you're speaking to parents here about how we can help our children.
Absolutely. So what fuels the development of children's friendships, from the little love the one you're with friendships of the toddler years to the more intimate and lasting friendships of the teen years, is an increasing ability to understand someone else's perspective. And this is great because this is absolutely something that parents can help with. So we want to, when our kid comes home and complains about something, of course, we want to empathize first, but then we can help them to imagine the other person's perspective. If we're reading a book or watching a movie, we can help kids imagine that inner world of thoughts and feelings from the other person's perspective. And this is how we navigate the social world. On the list of books, I just had a new one that came out last week. I'm so excited about it. It's for little ones, 4 to 8 year olds, and it's called Moody, Moody Cars. So I partnered with Michael Furman, who is this car photographer. And he has these gorgeous old vintage car photos. And I, of course, think they look emotional. So it goes,
That's great.
freewheeling full of feeling, traveling near and far. Honk if you see me, I'm a moody, moody car.
That's so creative. That's
It's
great.
really fun. And it's
Cars were
also,
so mean looking when I was growing up.
apparently angry cars sell the best. I don't know why. I would never buy a car that didn't look friendly. But this is really crucial because being able to recognize facial expressions and understand and label those feelings, kids who are better at that are better liked by their peers. They are less likely to behave aggressively. They do better in school. This is a foundational skill.
Yeah.
So being able to, if we talk about, there's also research that if we talk about feelings more with our kids, they become better able to understand someone else's perspective. So,
You know, your comments here are referencing. I picked them up out of the book of yours. What's My Child Thinking? Which is great because, you know, it really is the case, and that, you know, the 3 and 4 year old thinks very, very differently from the 5 and 6 year old, for example.
Yeah.
And can you talk just a little bit about that age group? You know, let's say early childhood to lower, you know, a little lower school, like the K1, 2, because that development, reading about that, it just hits me as that's so right. Those kids do think differently, and they do develop very rapidly into new modes of thinking, you know, at such a young age.
So I think around 4 is kind of the magic age where kids recognize that, oh, they can have a thought or a feeling that I'm not having. And that's really when things open up a lot. But cooperative play doesn't really become the main way that kids play together until age 5 or 6. So sometimes our expectations as parents about how the kids ought to be getting along are not realistic. So it takes a while. It takes a long time. And then we have different stages of friendships also. So I talked about the love the one you're with one. If they're fun, you know, they're fun. He's my best friend. I just met him. I don't know. What's his name? I don't know. So, they like the idea of having a friend, but they're not necessarily so good at being a friend. And then as kids get a little bit older in the early elementary years, they have a very transactional view of friendship about, I'll do this for you, but you better do something nice for me at the same time. And then as they get a little older, they have more of an idea of, you know, giving to a friend, but they also tend to be very exclusive about friends. So I got me a friend, I'm hanging on to as hard as I can. So
that's
they feel deeply wounded if the friend also has another friend. That's a hard thing to manage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's just so fraught when these little
it is
with big feelings.
You know, you mentioned a moment ago, just I want to pick up an item you mentioned in your book about first graders. This is the statistic you had about, you said half of the best friendships in first grade don't last the full school year.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I thought, boy, that's just like devastating to parents, even. You know, I mean, but help us understand why things are so complicated at this age, or why, how can friendships slip so easily?
Well, some of it is the kids are growing and changing so much. So that can be it. And some of it is because you need a certain amount of time together doing fun things to sustain the friendship. So sometimes it has nothing to do with them. A lot of times kids' friendships end just because they're in different classes the next year and they don't see each other as much, or they get involved in different activities and they don't see each other as much. The other part of it is because it's hard to get along with people, you know, because they don't always do things the way I think that they ought to. We adults haven't managed world peace or even perfect marriages, so it makes sense that kids would struggle to do that. But it's okay. It's a healthy learning. So in growing friendships, we talk about 5 foundational skills. And what's interesting is, now, this is a book for kids 6 to 12, so I obviously don't have citations in it, but there's a lot of research behind it. So the first skill is about reaching out to make friends. For instance, kids who are shy have trouble with this. So they look down or they look away if somebody greets them, and they're focused on their own distress. But the message that they're sending is, I don't like you. I don't want anything to do with you. That's not what they mean, but that's what they're conveying. So we can teach kids, for example, how to do a friendly greeting. You smile, you look the person in the eye, or if that's awkward for your child, they can look them in the forehead from a little bit of a distance. You can't see if somebody's looking in your eye or if they're looking in the forehead. Then you smile like you're happy to see the person, and you say the person's name. Another skill is stepping back, because some kids and adults come on too strong. They might be correcting other people, or they might be just annoying people instead of joining in. A third skill. So for those kids, we might want to teach them about stop signals. So with some of my kids and my clients, I've had them list specific stop signals, like quit it, cut it out, you're being annoying. Like, kids can be very direct. And I say, if you hear that, you need to stop, because otherwise you're saying to the kid, I don't care what you think, which is not what we want to do. So now with some children, we have to give them a specific thing to do to stop, because no stop and don't is very hard for kids. And some kids take longer to develop their breaks. So with that, then we might want to have them cross their arms or sit on their hands, or make a statement like, okay, I'll stop now. It's a little bit unusual, but it's better than persisting and really making someone mad. The third skill is about blending in to join a group. Now, this is interesting, because a lot of parents, back in the day when I used to give talks, a lot of parents say, oh, I don't know if I want my kid to blend in. Yes, you do, because joining in the camaraderie of a group is a special joy that we want our kids to have. That doesn't mean being a follower. Of course, you need to make wise decisions about which group are you going to join. But it is essential to be able to do that. So one of the skills that we teach there, and this is from research, it turns out there's a very specific way that kids join a group. And the formula is watch, then blend. So watch what the kids are doing, and then slide into the action without interrupting. The way I explain this to kids is it's kind of like merging onto a highway. There are two ways to mess up. One is you sit back on the entrance ramp and just watch all the cars go by, and you never get where you want to be. Or the other way is you just kind of barge in without even looking, and that disrupts everything, ends up in a big crash. So we don't want that either. The fourth skill is about speaking up, and that's about assertiveness, is speaking up in a way that's respectful of both others and ourselves. And the final skill is about letting go. So this one has a lot to do with forgiveness. And that's part of being a good friend. I had a kid once in my practice where the mom said, oh, why don't you play with the boy down the road? And he said, nuh-uh, because 2 years ago in travel soccer, he never passed the ball. You know, the 2 years is past the statute of limitations. So we actually list out forgiveness guidelines. So if it only happened once and it's never likely to happen again, let it go. If the person is genuinely sorry, let it go. If it happened more than a month ago, definitely let it go.
I want to pick up on just what you referenced about parents getting involved, and you know, like for example, when is it time for parents to sort of set aside and step aside, you know, the responsibility of you know, kids, let's say kids being proactive about a play date or something like that, you know, can you share some ideas regarding that, you know, and how to set kids up for success for a play date, but talk a little bit about parents and the role when they are being too intrusive, or when does that happen? What does that look like?
So we never want to do for our children what they could do for themselves. And that's how they gain experience. Now we can coach and we can encourage, but let them take the initiative as much as they can. We have to consider the family logistics also. If there's driving involved, the little ones can't do it. But even in the preschool years, children have preferences in who they play with. And I think we need to respect that and try to cultivate the friends that they like. A one-on-one play date is the single best thing as kids can do to deepen a friendship. Often kids are reluctant to invite people over because like, well, I don't know them that well. Fine, if you've had fun together once, that's good enough. Have them over and deepen the friendship. There's another tip that I offer in growing friendships, which is at the start of a play date, there's often that awkward moment where one kid says, what do you want to do? And the other kid says, I don't know, what do you want to do? We can skip that if you prepare your child. So when the other kid comes over, have your child greet them and offer two possibilities of things to do. Do you want to play Legos or do you want to go outside? Either way is fine. But if they have the two choices, then they can get to having fun together. And research shows that if the more time percentage-wise that the kids spend having fun together, the more likely they are to become closer friends.
That's great. That's great. I want to share with you a comment that I've heard a few times from parents in recent years, which is about parents becoming the best friends for their child. Can you talk about that a little bit? I've heard this, and what it sounds odd to me, and I didn't feel like counseling them in my role, but what are the issues here, about that?
Well, I think that's not the role that we want to aim for. Your child is going to have many friends, but they get only one mommy and daddy usually. Or, in some cases more than one, but few, So that's a very special role. Friendship is fundamentally a relationship between equals. You're not equal to your kids. You're the one with the card keys and the credit card. So, it's better for you to be in charge. If your kid knew best that they could get their own apartment and their own American Express card and we wouldn't have these problems, but they're not ready for that. So you better be in charge. But that doesn't mean, being harsh, but it means that you as an adult have a much bigger perspective than your child's very small world. So yes, you need to be able to say, to convey your values to the child. I mean, that's something that your community understands very deeply. The values matter, and that's on us as parents to communicate. This is what our family believes. This is what we think is important. This is right. This is not right.
You mentioned one phrase I really liked. It's a concept that you play with in your book, What's My Child Thinking, which is about the parent becoming your child's emotion. Would you say the emotion coach? I think you call it. Can you? I thought that's a fascinating concept. A way to frame your role as a parent. What does that entail to be an emotion coach?
So this is really interesting, and it's research-based. John Gottman did a whole series of studies, but he came up with the idea of emotion coaching by watching parents as they were helping their kid with a puzzle, and the puzzle was deliberately too hard. So he found that there were three main categories of responses. Some parents were what he called emotion dismissive. And they're like, don't get upset, come on, just keep focused, you can do this. So they weren't mean parents, but they kind of, shoved aside the emotions. Some parents, I forget the term that he used with it, but they were very focused on the emotions. And they were like, oh, this is so hard. Oh, you're feeling overwhelmed. So they did a great job of empathizing, but then they kind of left the kid hanging. Okay, so I'm upset, now what? The third group he called emotion coaching. And these ones did a combination of empathizing plus focusing on how to cope. And in other studies, he found that parents who did more emotion coaching had kids who did better socially and academically. I think it was 4 years later, which maybe it was 2 to 4 years later, I don't remember, but like long term, which we never get those kind of results. So this is really, really important. And we need those two ingredients, both empathizing and talking about, so what do you do when you're feeling upset?
Yeah. Well, I want to just, if we can shift a bit away from that to another big topic related to interpersonal relationships. And I want to talk a little bit about bullying.
Yes.
And, I can't profess ever to be a school head that, one of those school heads that says, we don't have bullying going on here because, it's a lot of that is under the radar and
Yeah.
we're not going to catch it. But I'm just wondering about, first of all, how would you define bullying, and how do you differentiate bullying from just people being silly and mean, or where it's not really, doesn't rise to the occasion of a capital crime of bullying?
Yeah. So that is a very important distinction. And researchers actually have a very specific definition of bullying. So it involves deliberate meanness, targeting a particular individual, usually over a period of time, but sometimes just one especially horrible action can count.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really important, it involves a power difference between the person doing the bullying and the person being targeted. That power difference is what makes it difficult or impossible for the kid being targeted to deal with it on their own. As parents, we need to be very, very careful about labeling what I call ordinary meanness as bullying, because then you're saying to the kid, oh, you're delicate. You can't handle it if someone is even slightly mean to you. It also keeps kids focused outward on other people and their badness. So there was an interesting study where they looked at kids, and as they were passing a sign and it said, no, stamp out bullying or whatever, and they asked the kids about it, and the kids' reaction was, those mean people should stop that. They didn't see it as referring to themselves whatsoever. So
Right.
I actually have a little questionnaire, and it's in a blog post. If you look up my name and say ordinary meanness, you can find it. And it's also in Smart Parenting for Smart Kids. But what I did is I had people, I did this when I was a school counselor for briefly, and it was like bullying or anti-bullying month, and we had to do something. So here's what happens if you say the word bullying in an elementary school classroom. Everybody's hands shoots up, and everybody has a story about, well, when I was in first grade, this kid, he did whatever. So they're very ready to point their fingers outwards. And I thought, you know what, that's not so useful. So I made up this questionnaire and I called it some honest self-reflection. And it had all kinds of questions about things that probably most of us have done. So things like, have you ever complained about having to work with someone? Have you ever continued to call someone a silly name even when they've asked you to stop? Have you ever said something about boyfriends and girlfriends that made someone feel uncomfortable? So there are all these things that maybe, have you ever complained about somebody behind their back? So these things that maybe most of us have done at some point. So when I did it in a classroom, I said, don't put your name on this. This is for your eyes only. And then we talked about, well, how did it feel to fill out that questionnaire? And some kids said they were surprised. And some kids said they felt guilty. And some kids said they felt relieved. And then I said, okay, don't tell me what it is, but I want you each to think about a time when you did something less than kind, and raise your hand when you've got it in mind. Don't tell me what it is, but just tell me when you have it in mind. And of course, there were some holdouts. So I said, I'm waiting, because we've all made choices that were less than kind. And so finally, I got everybody's hands up.
Wow.
But now I want you to make a promise to yourself that the next time you're in that situation, you're going to make the kind choice. Fundamentally, friendship is about kindness. And that's what we as parents need to be modeling, and what we need to be teaching our children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I don't mean to minimize bullying and meanness, just to say that I ran across a piece in a history book recently that there was bullying going on, and in the Middle Ages and in
Yeah.
Renaissance Italy,
Yeah.
in children.
It's hard. It's hard to get along with people. And I think it's a sign of adulthood when we don't take our moods out on other people. But I
Yeah.
had a kid in my practice who came and said to me, I was bullied today. And I said, oh, what happened? And he told me, this kid, he told me, quit making that annoying noise. I'm like, well, this is not my line. I wish I'd written it, but Michael Thompson has a great line to describe how children's view of conflict. And it goes like this. It all started when she kicked me back. So that is so beautiful because it absolutely focuses on it. It's easy to see what they're doing wrong. It's much harder to recognize our own roles.
Michael Thompson, he's such a good person for schools.
Yes.
He's great. I mean, I know that this might be sounding a little bit theoretical, but I mean, you referenced about those moody cars and people who buy the mean cars, and I just think something innate, like in Kubrick's film 2001, the Dawn of Man scene with the apes at the outset. And the apes that pick up the bones and start realizing that I can do something with this bone, and of course that whole scene seems to be a depiction of humanity and its inherent proclivity, to harass others and to impose one's power over each other. It just seems endemic, and here we are. With this nature, and I don't mean to be downcast about human nature, but education and parenting becomes so important.
And it does come down to our values. What keeps us from just taking what I want to heck with the rest of the world? It's because our values. Yeah.
One of my my own mentor headmasters, before I was head of school. He said, Tom, we're not here to make smart kids. We're here to make good kids. And this was in a top national school. It's always stuck with me. We're here to make good people and good children. And I think that by embracing whatever we can do with social emotional learning, that becomes so important. On this topic, I wanted to go a little further with this bullying, because I want you to talk about, and this is a question that came from a parent to me regarding the school's involvement or the school being asked to mediate between families. And I mean, I had a situation like this where two families, they just said, you know what, you need to tell us what to do, and you need to tell the other family this, and it was no more about the kids, it was about the parents, and of course it did not turn out well when they just demanded that the school has to solve this problem between these families. And that's how they even discussed it. It was a family issue, not just like a spat between two kids out in the schoolyard.
Yeah, I know of two cases that I've come across over the years where the kids had some kind of squabble and the parents got lawyers involved.
Oh my God.
So that is never the answer to, children not getting along. And these were children. So I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would you advise kids? Now, I'm going to dial it down a little bit on the bullying. How do you advise kids on how to respond to meanness? How can we help them with prevention strategies, or somehow to de-escalate an issue like that?
So let me tell you about a very interesting study. The researchers went into a kindergarten classroom and they recorded who picked on whom at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. At the beginning of the school year, pretty much everybody got picked on about the same amount. At the end of the school year, only certain kids were consistently picked on, and it was the kids who had the biggest emotional reaction.
Interesting.
So now I'm a mom of 4, and so I've seen this play out in real life. And it's interesting because I remember there was one time when I heard one of the older kids say to my youngest, "You're bad." And I was horrified. How could they say such a terrible thing, dismissing her whole worth as a human being? You know, I would never say something like that. I certainly had never said anything like that to them. But here's the interesting thing. My youngest was not devastated by the comment. And instead, she stuck her little chin in the air and she said, "I'm not bad." Isn't that wonderful? And that's what we want for our kids. And if you have siblings in your family, that's great, because based on the sibling conflicts that you have had to endure as they've grown up, hopefully your kids will learn to stick their chins in the air and say, in a situationally and developmentally appropriate way, "I'm not bad." Yeah. So with kids in my practice, I'm often teaching them how to respond to teasing. Now, I want to be clear here. I am not condoning teasing or bullying or meanness of any sort. Definitely not. But I do think that it is a necessary social skill for kids to be able to handle teasing. So, and we can arm them with this. So I had a kid once who was riding the bus, and there was this other kid who was kind of nasty. And he said one day to my boy, "Everybody hates you. You have no friends at all." Whew, you know, what a mean thing. But fortunately, my kid was ready. And he said, "Okay." What a conversation ender, you know? And then somebody else piped in and goes, "He does not, that's not true." So that was good too. But we can't tell kids you shouldn't care what other people think of you, because, you know, then they'd be sociopaths. So we don't want that.
Right.
But we can help them discern, is this somebody whose opinion you value? And if it's not, let them say whatever they want to say. We don't care. We don't believe them. So they could just the very bored, "Okay," could work. "So what" is fine. In my family, the kids used to say, "I know what's true, so I won't listen to you." So that'll work. Another thing to do is to pretend it's a compliment. So one of my kids has my fluorescent white skin, and you know, it glows, right? So strangers comment on it, and she just did a thing that if people were commenting, it's like, "God, you're pale," which is so rude and so inappropriate. She would respond by saying thanks and giving him a big smile, like that was the biggest compliment ever. So there was another situation where it was actually the younger brother that was tormenting the older sister. And he did this by wherever they went, whatever they did, he would turn it into a contest. So, "I got here first." And then she would start shrieking, "Mom, it's not a contest. He's saying he's first." So what we did is we coached the older daughter that when he would say, "I got more," she would say, "Congratulations." And "Mine is bluer." Congratulations. Yeah. But arming the kids is real. So I'll tell you another story from
That's
my
something. So
family.
dialing down that emotional, reaction is great.
Oh, exactly. So the 4 kids, the number 2 is my son, and he would enjoy sneaking up on the next younger kids and grabbing her dolls. And then she would start screaming bloody murder. And then I would get involved, demanding that he give the doll back while he ran around the room laughing and flaunting the doll. So obviously my daughter's shrieks and my demands weren't doing a thing to discourage this behavior. So I pulled her aside and I coached her on how to respond. So the next time he snuck up on her and grabbed her doll, she looked up at him and said, "I didn't know you were interested in dollies. Would you like to play Kelly's with me?" He laughed, threw the doll down, and that was the end of it. And it worked so much better than me getting involved in it. She was empowered.
That's a great scenario, about really how you can de-escalate these matters. I mean, it's
They
amazing.
don't have to be wounding, because
Yeah,
the alternative is to be, really upset about what everybody says
or to
at
get
all
us
times.
rattled, yeah, or get just
Yeah,
as
don't give them that power.
yeah, don't give them that power. That's a good lesson about chatter out in the schoolyard, or
Yeah.
people, chit-chatting about you, and when they're probably not even chit-chatting about you.
Right. So they may not be. So that this is another situation that comes up a lot.
Mhm.
So um, kid one says something mean to kid two about
Right,
kid three.
right.
And then kid two runs to kid three to say what kid one said.
Mhm,
And kid two thinks that she's being a loyal friend to kid three, but
mhm,
no, what she's doing is she's spreading the meanness.
mhm.
So
That's
what
right.
she should do is not repeat it
That's right.
and just let it die down. And she could say either or,
Mhm.
well, she always says good things about you. I mean, that'll kill it. So,
Yeah.
so it kind of depends on what's going on.
There's another social scrape that some, okay, in this instance, because this is coming from a parent as well, this scenario told me about their daughter, in middle school, who really wanted to be a part of this girl posse group, right? And who already had years of being together, and they were so tight, and they were the group,
Yeah.
the queen group. And this other, their daughter was recently came into our school, and was just devastated that she couldn't penetrate this social group, even though these other girls who are not in that group are nice girls. They reached
Mhm.
out to her. How do you counsel a child like that? And of course, and I don't know how you get involved in both sides of this. You can't go to the posse girls and say, you know what, you need to have one more in your group.
Right.
But how would you work with this child who wants to be part of a group that she can't be part of, and they won't let her in?
So that's really interesting, because like in kindergarten, you can say, now children, we all need to be friends, but kids have preferences, even
Yeah.
in nursery schools. So and that's human nature.
Hmm.
Um, like sometimes I go out to dinner with my husband and I don't invite my neighbor.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm not being mean.
What's the matter with you?
Right. So I'm not being exclusive. People have
Mhm.
things in common. So what this girl is figuring out, though, is kind of a social hierarchy, and there are groups that are more powerful
Mhm.
socially. What's interesting is the most popular group is not necessarily the best liked group. That came out of research,
Mhm.
that there and just our life experience. Popular
Interesting.
does
Okay.
not equal well liked. There's some kids are both, but not necessarily. The other thing to think about
Mhm.
is that not everybody's gonna want to be best friends with us, even if we like them a lot. I really like Stephen Colbert, and
Mhm.
he's never called me, so, but he's not rejecting me, right? He doesn't even know my name. So kids make friends by doing fun things together. Kids are
Mhm.
also all of us are more likely to make friends with people where we have a lot in common. So if you think of two overlapping circles, one is you and the other, or your kid,
Mhm.
and the other is the other kid, the overlap is where friendships begin. If there's no overlap, you're not going to become friends. And that's nobody's fault. So what I would
Mhm.
do with that kid is, of course, you comfort her and say, it hurts your feelings that they're not playing with you, or that they'd rather play. It's hard to feel left out, and that's genuine. But then we want to be thinking about, what does she like to do?
Mhm.
And who else likes to do the same thing? And let's figure out a way to do that. That's how we build up those friendships.
No, I look at that. That's I love this, because it's leading me to some other interesting concepts here. that I wanted to ask you about, and which is about some of the positive traits that, when you just think about them in and of themselves, but that are positive traits. However, they've become a little controversial lately. I just want to hear your thoughts on this idea of the importance of self-esteem and investing self-esteem, or trying to instill self-esteem in your children. Where can it go wrong? Where is it good?
Yeah. So I actually wrote a whole book on that, Kid Confidence, because there is so much nonsense out there about self-esteem. Things like you have to believe in yourself to accomplish things, or you can't love anyone else until you love yourself, or things or the key to success is to love yourself, or whatever.
Right.
So the problem with this is, who stands in front of a mirror, honestly, and says, gosh, I love myself? And would you want to be friends with them if they did? I mean, that's not the goal. And the problem also is that when we parents hear a kid self-doubting or putting themselves down, our impulse is to argue and to say, oh, but that's not true, and you're so wonderful in this way, and you're so wonderful in that way, and you accomplish this other thing. But the problem is, the more we argue that they're wonderful, the harder self-doubting kids argue that they're terrible. So this is not going to work. Accomplish all the recipes that we think ought to boost kids' self-esteem, they don't work. So the lavish praise absolutely doesn't work. The accomplishments don't work, because we all know people who are incredibly accomplished but hate themselves. And we certainly don't want to put our kids on a treadmill of constantly having to prove their worth. The affirmations absolutely do not work. That's also all over Instagram about, they'll say these affirmations. Do not say those affirmations, because for self-doubting kids, what happens is those affirmations highlight the discrepancy between the glorious affirmation and what they really think about themselves. The problem is that all of these are not the right goal. What we want instead, what we're aiming for instead, is the way we are with a close friend. Think about that. You're not saying, does she like me? Or is he impressed by me? You're not even thinking about yourself, because you're just immersed in the conversation or the activity. And there's a beautiful kind of forgetting of the self. And this is called a quiet ego, which I think is such a beautiful concept. And how do we help kids develop this quiet ego? By helping them connect with something outside of themselves. That could be a friendship. It could be a topic that they're passionate about learning. It could be a group or a community or a value that they care about. And now I'm just part of it, as opposed to the most important part. So here's something really interesting, just as an experiment. If you tell a kid nowadays the quote, it was from John F. Kennedy, who was quoting something from the Bible about, to those whom much has been given, or from those to whom much has been given, much is expected. Tell kids that quote and ask them if they can say what it means.
Interesting. Here's
my bet. The kid will say it's something about the need for individual accomplishment surpassing all others. No. The quote is about the call to community service, for each of us to give what we have for the greater good. But our society has so focused on the how good are you, how great are you, and this leads. So instead of trying to boost kids' self-esteem, what we need to do is turn down the volume on self-focus and self-judgment. Help them have that generous outward focus, and it's a lot easier.
Wow, that's beautiful. And Dr. Eileen, this has been fantastic. I have one sort of final thought here, and I want you to respond. And I don't mean to be facetious to say that, that many of us live in an age of let's call it greater relative affluence and fortune, and and I don't mean to demean anybody out there or to place us or these people or that people above any others, but what I mean is that on the good side, affluence means tons of choices and services and products and self-improvement strategies and of course an explosion of technology and and media and ever-present communications, but at the same time it seems that parents today, it's being a parent today, it's so much more complicated or challenging than it was 1 or 2 generations ago.
Right.
And I mean, I would never expected this thinking about it way back then. But what kind of advice would you leave for parents of young children while we continue to navigate today's complexity? How can we be, good? You have this one phrase, and maybe you can answer this and by talking about the difference between like good enough, you have that good enough.
Yeah.
Like you're better off being just good enough than you are being perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's wherein you have an answer to this. But can you comment about parents today and what advice you have for them?
As after keeping them alive, I think our deepest responsibility as parents is to teach our kids how to be in relationships.
Mm.
That's what they're going to carry with us, long after, we're done discussing how often they should shower. It's how should they be in a relationship? And that means being able to imagine someone else's perspective. I had a young girl recently who, she doesn't like it when people take her picture. She's in elementary school, and they were going to grandma's birthday party, and grandma loves pictures. And so I said to the girl, whose feelings are most important in that moment? Sometimes it's your feelings, but in this moment, whose feelings are most important? And of course it was grandma's because it was her birthday. But that being able to pull out of ourselves is crucial. The basis of our empathy is understanding our own feelings, because that's how it helps us to imagine someone else's feelings. So talking about feelings, talking about what is the kind thing to do in this situation. I mean, that was a question that I drove home with my kids constantly, about what is the kind thing to do in this situation. May not be the easy thing, but what is the kind thing? Because that's my deepest value. Make the kind choice. And value the in-person interaction. Our gadgets are so alluring and so easy that it's easy to get lost in that. And, I like my devices, but it doesn't replace the face-to-face interaction and the doing. Kids especially the little ones, they like to be helpers. Let's give them the opportunity to do that, to make a real difference. There's actually research that kids who do chores are happier. I've cited this research to my children. It didn't seem to help, but they didn't buy it. But I think it's really important for kids to feel like, yes, I do contribute to the family, and I do contribute to my community. And what I'm seeing more with the older kids is this negativity and lack of hope about everything is bad. The environment is bad, racism is bad, the war is bad, COVID is bad, politics are bad. And they're not wrong, but we can't leave them stuck in that helplessness and despondency. So finding child-sized ways to take action on the causes that matter to your family or to your child are really important. Even so, during COVID, one of the things that I suggested was to make a surprise for friends. whether it's cookies or ingredients or something, and then just go drop it off. This was wonderful for the kids to be able to do that and to feel like,
great.
oh, I brightened someone's day. It doesn't have to happen only in COVID, you know, it could be like, what can you do? And then they get the helper's high, and that feels really lovely. Well, they'll see us as we're talking in resolving conflicts in our own families, or in the way that we treat the person at the cash register in the grocery store. Our children are watching us, and they are learning, how do we treat other people? So we want to be good role models for them too.
Well, Dr. Eileen, this has been a pleasure, and it's been most illuminating. And I just want to thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom with our school community this evening.
I do have one gift for your community. So if you go to opendoorforparents.com or just go to my website, because the demand for psychologists has been so high, I started a thing called Open Door for Parents, and it's free. Every other week, I send out a 2-minute video about children's feelings and friendships, because nobody can stand to read anymore. 2-minute videos, like everything. And then on the off weeks, I do a question and answer part, and that's all free. And if you sign up, you also get 3 free ebooks, helping when your child cries easily, when your child says nobody likes me, and when your child gets bullied.
No, we're happy to share that. No, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
We will certainly share those things and list your items. I think that you have a wonderful way to be succinct and speak very, very simply and I think quite effectively to children. And it really shows in your books, and I love the way they're formatted with a little bit of cartoon here and there, so it makes it fun. The one about growing friendships, and look, it's a real pleasure, Dr. Eileen Kennedy-Moore, to have you. I just want to say thank you. We'll share that tidbit of psychological goodness that we're going to get from you.
Thank you.
And we will definitely use that, absolutely, and spread that word. We appreciate that very much. Thank you so much to you. And thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. Good night, and everybody have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye now.